Chapter 3. Nick ran out of the room, screaming. "Come back!" Tesla shouted after him. "He's an exterminator!" I know! Nick screeched from the kitchen. "Of bugs, Nick!" Tesla glanced back at the man in the tan jumpsuit, just to make sure he wasn't about to send a jet of liquid flame her way. "That is for killing termites, right?" she said, pointing at the sprayer on his back. "Among other things," the man said. "Is that kid all right?" "He's just been a little stressed out lately, that's all." Tesla turned towards the kitchen again. "Nick, it's all right. I'm still alive." Slow, soft footsteps could be heard crossing the kitchen, and then Nick eased his head around the corner. "You are?" he said. There were more footsteps, quicker and heavier, and Uncle Newt and Ollie appeared behind him. "What's all the yelling about?" Uncle Newt said. "I haven't blown anything up all day." He looked at the exterminator and grinned. "Ah, the maid!" His gaze shifted to something behind the man. "And the exterminators too. What timing!" Nick and Tesla followed their uncle's gaze and saw a pair of tiny, white-haired women in powdered blue smocks peering into the house through the open front door. "Maid? Exterminators?" said Nick. "You mean exterminator," the man in the jumpsuit said indignantly, thumping his chest with a thumb. "And the maids." "Right, fine, great, whatever," said Uncle Newt. He began waving the maids inside. Come in, you've got the right place." The little old ladies looked dubious, but they gathered their supplies they'd left on the porch behind them, buckets, spray bottles, brooms and mops, and began lugging them inside. "Uncle Newt," Tesla said, "what's going on?" "Oh, I was just thinking the place needed a tidying up. When Hiroko dropped by yesterday, she looked a little put off by the mess, and the nets, and the brown recluse spider on the dining room table." "Brown recluse spider!" Nick yelped. "Those things are dangerous!" "Oh wait, it wasn't a brown recluse," Uncle Newt said, chuckling at his own foolishness. "They're not native to California." Nick sighed in relief. "Silly me," Uncle Newt said. "It was a black widow." Nick went very, very pale. "Don't worry," his uncle assured him. "I got it and put it, somewhere." Nick's face didn't regain any colour. "So let me see if I understand," Tesla said. "Nick and I come to live with you, and you don't so much as sweep the floor, but a lady you like maybe notices some dust, and suddenly it's time to call in the professionals." Uncle Newt nodded, still grinning obliviously. "Yup," he said. "Lucky for me, I just happened to hear from Maids to Order and Verminator Pest Control yesterday. They were both running specials. First day of service is free." "Yeah, right," Tesla said, eyeing the exterminator and the maids. "How very lucky." "Where do you want us to start, mister?" said one of the maids. "Doesn't matter to me," Uncle Newt told her. "You have the run of the house." "Is that really such a good idea?" Nick said, his gaze sweeping the ceiling for spiders. Uncle Newt didn't hear him because the man from the Verminator Pest Control spoke at the same moment. "How about me?" he said. "Oh, just go wherever they're not," Uncle Newt said, waving at the maids. "Now come along, Ollie. You've got a compost combustion chamber to clean out for me." "And this is science?" Ollie asked. "Of course," Uncle Newt assured him as they turned and left. "Sort of." The Verminator guy began wandering around, spraying pesticides here and there at random. As he came closer, Tesla noticed a name stitched in curly gold letters over the left breast of his jumpsuit. Skip. The maids just stood staring around the clutter-filled house with a dazed, "What have we got ourselves into?" look on their faces. "Come along, sister," Nick said stiffly. "Let's go outside and play with our toys." He wasn't the best actor in the world. There you go, he exploded once he and Tesla were in the backyard. "Is that enough suspects for you? One of those people has got to be the spy, or all of them for all we know." It is weird how they all showed up the day after we got Mum's message. Weird? It's not weird, it's terrifying. Our uncle's house is filled with spies and black widow spiders. Mum and Dad might as well have sent us to live in a family of cobras in a volcano. Calm down, Nick. It was one spider, and Uncle Newt caught it. And I can think of an easy way to thwart spies. Really? How? Don't give them anything to spy on, Tesla said. She started walking towards the street. Come on. So we just stay away, Nick said as he hustled after her. That's only going to work for so long. We'll have to go back eventually. I know, Tesla said, but hopefully when we do go back, we'll have reinforcements. Uncle Newt lived in a quiet neighborhood, sandwiched by the Pacific Ocean on one side and little downtown Half Moon Bay, California on the other. Even in the summertime, the ocean was too cold to swim in without a wetsuit, and there wasn't much for kids to do downtown except eat frozen yogurt from It's Froze-Yo, if they had the money for it, and watch tourists pull in off the Pacific Coast Highway in search of antiques, local colour, and non-fat cappuccinos. So Nick and Tesla knew where to look for their friends Silas and DeMarco. If they weren't cruising the neighborhood on their bikes in hopes that something, anything interesting was happening, they'd be in Silas's or DeMarco's backyard making something interesting happen. This day, it was DeMarco's yard, and the something interesting was, apparently, DeMarco's death. Silas was perched at the top of a slide attached to a rickety metal playset, a garden hose in his hands. Water flowed down the slide to a mud pit DeMarco was making even muddier by busting up sod with a shovel. DeMarco's bicycle was leaning against the ladder leading to the top of the slide. No way, Nick said, instantly grasping what his friends were planning to do. DeMarco grinned. Yes way, he said. DeMarco wanted to be a stuntman when he grew up, and if he couldn't find anyone to pay him to crash cars and leap off buildings, he said, he would just have to do it for free. In the meantime, he liked to do things like jump over mud pits by riding bikes down slicked-up slides. Seems pretty tame, actually. There's only a 75% chance he'll break your neck, Tesla said. Couldn't you get the hose up on the roof? She was being sarcastic. Silas didn't notice. The roof's been off limits since the time DeMarco broke his collarbone, so we're making this a little more interesting, he said from the top of the slide. He was a big kid. A soon-to-be 8th grader who looked like he was ready for college. It was a bit of a miracle that the slide wasn't crumpling beneath him. Does your mum know you're doing this? Nick asked DeMarco. DeMarco planted the shovel in the mud and leaned against it. He was so short and lean, he didn't seem much bigger than the shovel. I don't think she'll complain as long as it keeps me safe and sound in the backyard. Nick watched water pour down DeMarco's makeshift ramp. This is safe and sound. Compared to some things, DeMarco said. He waggled his eyebrows at Tesla. What? She said. Us? We're dangerous? DeMarco shrugged. According to Mum and Dad, they're pretty down on you two right now, Silas explained. They say you're trouble. We're not trouble, Tesla protested. We just lead interesting lives. DeMarco laughed at the understatement. So tell me, he said, what's going on over at your uncle's today? Trouble, Nick said. Tesla shot him a frown. Well, it's true, Nick said, and he went on to tell Silas and DeMarco about their mother's warning and the sudden appearance of 4 potential spies. Ollie, the apprentice, Skip, the Verminator, and the 2 maids. Too bad you can't just call Agent McIntyre in with your thingamajigs, Tesla said, pointing down at the pendant that hung around Nick's neck. Agent McIntyre was a mysterious friend of Nick and Tesla's parents. She'd shown up to help the kids once before, but they had no idea how to contact her. They'd once tried simply screaming into the pendants, but it soon became obvious that whatever the little star-shaped thingamajigs were, they weren't walkie-talkies. Well, Agent McIntyre's not around, Tesla said. Uncle Newt is, but he's, Uncle Newt. So we're on our own. Maybe you guys could come over and help us spy on the spies, Nick suggested. Oh, cool, Silas said. DeMarco looked unenthused, though. If they even are spies, he says. Seems more like we're just ending up spying on some cleaning ladies, a bug guy, and a dude with a weird thing for a peanut butter and jelly. You don't believe us? Nick asked incredulously. About the message from our mum. It's not that I don't believe you, it's just that... He's scared, Tesla said. DeMarco snapped up to his full, diminutive height and glared at Tesla across the gloopy, ever-expanding mud puddle at his feet. I'm not scared of any of your so-called spies, he said. I know, Tesla replied. It's your parents you're afraid of, and your sisters. DeMarco's mouth puckered into a small, hard line. It was obvious he wanted to deny what Tesla had said, and just as obvious that he couldn't. DeMarco was the oldest kid in his house, but not even remotely close to the meanest. DeMarco lived for thrills. His sisters lived to get him in trouble. We understand, Nick said. We'll just have to figure out something else. Come on, Tez. Nick and his sister turned to leave. Wait, Silas called out. Maybe I can... Yee! The yee ended with a sploosh. Silas had slipped and slid down the slides. When his 170 pounds hit the ground, an equal amount of mud splurted in all directions. Somehow, most of it managed to land on Nick and Tesla. Gooey brown gloop covered them from head to toe. Silas lifted his face from the sludge, spat out a mouthful of muck, and said, Sorry. DeMarco burst out laughing. He'd been just as close to the puddle as Nick and Tesla, yet he was totally clean except a single small streak on his jeans. Thanks, Tesla spat at him. She swung her furious glare over at Silas. Thanks for everything. I knew we could count on you. She spun on her heel, which was easy to do considering how slick with sludge it was, and stomped off. Oh, come on, Tez, Silas moans. It was an accident. Tesla didn't look back. If a few days go by and you haven't seen us, Nick said, call the police. He turned and set off after his sister, his soaked shoes squishing with every step. Uncle Newt's house had only one usable shower. There were 2 bathtubs, but one was filled with the leftovers from a failed attempt to grow glow-in-the-dark mushrooms. So either Nick or Tesla was going to have to wait while the other got clean. I'll pay $2 million for dibs on the bathroom, Tesla said, as she and her brother tracked ooze across the neighborhood. $4 million, said Nick, and keep your shower short. Deal. Nick and Tesla did a lot of big money wheeling and dealing. Thanks to this newest bargain, Nick's debt to his sister was now down to $9 million. He fully intended to pay her too, if he ever had any money. When they got to the house, Tesla kicked off her shoes and went inside while Nick waited on the back porch. After a few seconds, there was a shriek from inside, but Nick knew Tesla wasn't in trouble. It sounded like one of the cleaning ladies. Nick didn't blame the woman for screaming. Even with her shoes off, Tesla was probably leaving a soggy brown trail through the house, and she and Nick were so coated in mud they looked like a couple of Sasquatches, albeit not particularly tall ones. While Nick waited, he noticed Julie Castley installing a new garden gnome by the bushes beside the house. Its predecessor had been destroyed when one of Uncle Newt's inventions, a supposedly self-controlled lawnmower, got snagged on it and blew up. Let me guess, Julie said when she noticed Nick watching her. A harmless little experiment didn't go as planned. Nick shook her head. The mud covering him had begun to dry under the summer sun, and big, crumbly chunks flaked off and tumbled to the ground whenever he moved. We were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, he said. Julie gave him a sour smile. I know the feeling. She stood and pointed down at the gnome. If anything happens to him, you'll hear from my lawyers. Okay, Nick said, putting up his hands so many mud clots broke free and fell to his feet. It looked like he was standing in the nastiest corner of an elephant cage. You don't have to worry about me and my sister. We wouldn't go anywhere near our neighbour's property. Before Julie could reply or even roll her eyes, Tesla came bursting out the back door. She was in a bathrobe, and her hair was still soaking wet. Nick, come here, she said. I want to show you something. She started marching across the lawn towards Mr. Jones's backyard. But Tez, Nick said. Come on. Nick offered Julie an apologetic shrug, cracking off mud crust from his shoulders in the process, then turned to hustle away after his sister. Tesla didn't stop until she was standing by the old but gleaming black Cadillac in Mr. Jones's driveway. She knelt beside one of the rear wheels. You ran out of the shower to show me a hubcap, Nick said. No, Tesla said, pointing at the spotless hubcap anyway. I ran out here because you were right all along, and I didn't say it where someone might hear me. Nick squatted and pretended to find the hubcap fascinating. Are you saying there's a spy in the house? How do you know? I took off my pendant before getting in the shower, Tesla said. When I got out, it was gone. Someone came into our room and stole it. Stole your pendant? But why? I'd rather know. Who? Let's go find out then. Let's go find out then, Nick said. He stood and put his clenched fist on his hips. The scientific way. Shards of dried mud rained from his sides to form a crumbly pile on Mr. Jones's driveway. After I take a shower, Nick added.